people don't really consider the big picture of what's involved with police standards and training. And I wanted to actually be able to have a conversation, kind of longer form, over what that entails. I mean, when you look at what your day to day responsibilities are as the director of that, what does that look like?
I don't know that police training in New Hampshire or police training in general was really on the forefront of anybody's mind, up until the tragic incident that occurred last year with the murder of George Floyd. But it also, I guess, from a positive point of view, is it kind of brought to the forefront, really what kind of effort and what kind of things are needed for a police officer to be trained, to be ready to go out and serve their communities, in an appropriate, proper way.
How do current events like what has happened over the last year and a half affect what goes on at the academy, whether it's COVID, whether it's just national stories like George Floyd, and how do those have a more direct impact in how you guys operate?
There are things that are happening in our country nationally, and clearly, being in those conversations and understanding national impact issues is very important for us here in New Hampshire. But it's equally important and probably more important for us to make sure that we are addressing the issues that occur here in New Hampshire. My responsibility as the director of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training is to make sure that we are serving the state of New Hampshire, and making sure that we are producing competent, professional, courageous police officers to serve our state. And I think, again, the tragic murder of George Floyd caused every single police trainer in every state of our country, and let's agree, across the world, right, to really take a hard look at what we're doing here in New Hampshire. And I can tell you, I was privileged to be allowed to participate as a LEACT commissioner. The governor appointed me as the director of Police Academy to be part of that commission. And I'll tell you, I took some flack because I said, overall in New Hampshire, we do a pretty good job. We do a pretty good job of policing our own. We do a pretty good job of making sure that the police officers receive good training, solid training. We hold police officers accountable in this state. Now, as you can imagine, that declaration was not received well by some people, and I was called out on it on a number of occasions. But I stand by what I say, because I guess the backup statement would be, you don't see police officers choking people here in New Hampshire. You don't see police officers doing what happens, in other parts of the country here in New Hampshire. When you see a police officer or hear of a police officer who has committed a crime, they're dealt with very swiftly, and you only need to look at the paper to understand that that's how it goes here. So I stand by what I said, but that doesn't mean, and I really want to make sure that people understand that doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement. That doesn't mean that me as the leader of this organization and all of the chiefs, the colonel of the state police, all the sheriffs, we all recognize that we need to always look within to see what we can do better, right? And if, as a leader of any organization, if you are not looking to make your organization better and be forward leaning, then you shouldn't hold that position, right? And I recognize that there's a lot of steps that we needed to take. I'll tell you right now, the day that George Floyd died, I asked my training staff to bring me the lesson plans for our defensive tactics program, our cultural diversity program, our bias program, our ethics program, our communication program. I asked for that material that day because I wanted to see where we stood. And I will tell you right now, some of those areas we stood very firmly on high ground. There was one area in particular that we absolutely were not doing a good job on, and that was implicit bias and cultural diversity. We had a 2-hour block of instruction on something that is vitally important to train people in who have to work with other people. This is a people job, right? And with the help of Assistant Commissioner Eddie Edwards, who's actually a good friend of mine, he and I got together. We put together a working group of professional people that included folks from UNH, from Keene State, the ACLU. We brought a lot of people into the room to really look hard at what we were delivering for that block of instruction at a recruit level. And ultimately, what we came out of that discussion with. And we went from 2 hours of implicit bias and procedural justice training to 16 hours. And that program was developed by all of those constituents that made up that work group. I'm very proud of that work, and very proud of Lieutenant James Watson, who's a training specialist here, and he led that working group. And in my opinion, it's a great lesson plan.